Good morning, folks. It's old Hunter here. Hadn't filmed one of these in a while, and about time, so I think I've got some interesting things, and I'll show you. There's a lot of stuff on the mantle because the mantle is mine to decorate. After I rebuilt this place, remodeled it, the wife, she had her hands in every bit of decoration in here, which I had not much say so. So I said, the mantle is mine. I even built the mantle. So I'm gonna step over here to the fireplace and start showing you some of the stuff and tell you about it, okay? This bass right here is probably 35 years old, if not older. When I worked out at Chevron, we had a fishing rodeo. And I took first place with this bass. This bass weighs 7 pounds. It's 24 inches long. The taxidermist said if she'd have been full of eggs, she'd have weighed 8 plus, okay? The funny thing about that fish, a good friend of mine, we took a trip, went up what they call Red Gap. It's up Highway 49 going north from the coast. And you turn to go back in, there's a guy, he dug some about 100-acre lakes there. He charged people to come in, camp and fish. He had stocked with bluegill, that big, I mean big bluegill. So my buddy asked me, he said, well, Mom and Daddy's going up there. He said, we're going to go up there and camp too. He said, why don't you go with us? I said, that sounds fine. So we get up there, and the first day we was there, we go out, we're fishing on the bottom with crickets and a little split shot on Zepco 202s. Hadn't been long, and I threw it out by a stump. Well, I had a big old bluegill, and I was fighting him, bringing him in. Next thing I know, a big bass come up and grabbed that bluegill and took off. I said, whoa, and here I was with a 202 and the line screaming out. It was unreal. I kept messing with him. And I finally got into the side of the boat. We didn't have a dip net. We wasn't bass fishing. We was fishing for bluegill. We got right to the side of the boat. He kind of looked at me like that. He spit that bluegill and actually went over the rail of the boat, landed in the boat. He wasn't hooked, just had that big old bluegill in his mouth. I looked at my buddy. He looked at me. I said, did you see that? I said, I sure did. I said, I'm going to catch that something. I'm entering him in that rodeo. I said, because I got a feeling he might take first place. I said, next weekend, I can't go next week. I said, well, I'm going. So next Saturday morning, 4 days, I'm off. I'm taking off. I'm going up there and I have my little boat. And I get up there, start putting stuff in the boat out the back of the truck, and I forgot my tackle box. Well, I seen a guy that I knew in school, told him, and his name was Larry. I said, Larry, do you have a good size hook that I could borrow from you? I said, because I know there's a big bass on it, so I could catch him. He said, well, you just do nothing but fish for bread, but let's go look at the tackle. He had one hook about that big, and it was even kind of rusty. But I knew I had a file of a tackle box, a little file. So I sharpened it up. Here I go. Okay. So I go over by the spillway, and I catch me 4 or 5 bluegill about that big for bait, and run back around and anchor it up about 30, 40 feet from that stump. Put that big old bluegill on there, threw it out there. No cork or nothing. I wanted him to swim around. He didn't want to soon hit the water, went down, and all of a sudden, my ambassador 6,000 20-pound test line took off. I wasn't worried about him messing that reel up, because I caught some big fish on it. So me and him, here we go. We fighting that something. I'm fighting him. I finally get him in the boat. Well, to show you how sure I was of catching him, before I went up there, I called Mr. Knight at a taxidermist business in Goche and asked him what I needed to do to protect that fish before it got to him. He said, well, to start off with, he said, look, he said, bring you a white towel, white pillowcase, and a plastic bag. He said, wrap that fish up in that towel and wet it, put him in a pillowcase, roll it up, and put him in a plastic bag. He says, you get home, just put the whole thing in the freezer. And then when you get time, bring him over here, and I'll go ahead and mount it for you. Well, a year later, before I had a chance to go in and get him mounted, well, not a chance, a year later before I had the money to get him mounted was the whole deal, you know. After he mounted, he said, I want to tell you something. He said, me and the wife ate that meat. He said, it was just as good as the day it was caught. So if you do stuff right, it turns out right. All right, let me make another little talk here. This right here is probably
40 years.
At least 40 years old, okay? And they used to extend the bow season in February. After January, when it closed, they extended the bow season. And it was for bucks only and bows only. Well, that's when I take my vacation. I'd always take 2 weeks, because I love to bow hunt, and there was hardly nobody in the woods. So I was going up to Leaf River, one of my favorite places to hunt, it's a wildlife reserve. And I was coming on this road and had a sandy stretch for about 100 yards, kind of. And I had to go to the bathroom, so I pulled the truck over the side. And when I got out, I was walking down the road because it was a steep bank. So I had to walk down the road, and I found a place to go up. And you can see that's where deer were coming off that high bank. And the road was just covered with deer tracks. I said, good Lord, look at this. Well, I sure didn't want to go to the bathroom there. So I got in the truck, drove on down the road about 500-600 yards, used the bathroom. Then I come back, and on that side of the road where most of the tracks was leading was like a grove of little blackjack oaks. So I walked in there, and you can see where they had pawed the ground up after them acorns. I was finding scrapes like this, and I found one big scrape. It must have been that big. That's where I got a hunt. That's a good buck doing that. Well, I went out to the truck. I got my climber. And I went back in. It's about like 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm planning on staying all day. And I looked around. And there was no big pine trees. I couldn't climb the blackjack oaks because the limbs went almost within 5 foot of the ground. So I found one little pine about that big, and I was able to get up maybe 10 feet, which usually I go up about 20. I said, well, it's better than nothing. So I climbed that little pine tree, and that's whenever rattling horns had just started being popular. So I had a set of horns I was going to rattle and try that. Matter of fact, this is the first day of that 2-week bow season. So that's why I'll give it a try. So I said, I rattle them horns off and on till about, maybe probably about an hour before dark. Hadn't seen nothing, hadn't heard nothing. So I rattled them again, I set them down, and I got my climber facing that big scrape. Now that big scrape was right on the edge of where it went down into the bottom. So I figured that's where the deer's gonna come from. That bottom comes to this scrape. So I'm sitting out here, a little noise. I look, and here's this one right here. I was coming up in the bank. First, I could just see his horns, I could see his head, and then I could see his whole body. And he walked up there. When he got up to the top where that scrape was, he stopped. And he's staring just like that, looking right at me. I said, that son gun sees me. He's looking right at me. I said, man, I don't know what to do. I can't draw. He's gonna see me move. Well, finally, after about 5 minutes staring now, I said, well, he's gonna run, or I'm gonna shoot him one else. So I got my bow up and pulled it back. He's still staring right at me. I let it go, and smack, I got him good right behind the shoulder. He took off and went down that bottom. Well, he took off and run. I heard one heck of a noise behind me. And I turned and looked. Here was old big boy. He come to them horns too, and I didn't know it. He slipped in on me. And that's what that little buck was looking at. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at that big buck. And so I harvested him, and I'm quite proud of him. I used to get the Bow Hunter magazine, and to show you how old it is, that is a picture right there of me and my son when he was like 3 or 4 years old. How old are you, Mark? 45. So that set of horns right there is probably 42 years old. Well, folks, I'm going to get me a cup of coffee in a little bit, but I got one other thing I got to show you. And I'm very proud of this. This is a duck call. And it was given to me about a week ago, which is at the wrestling show over in Natchez. Me and my son, we like to wrestle. He got a lot of friends and all. And we meet them there and all. And Kobe and his daddy, Steve, got this, I think, as top salesman or something. God knows what it costs, because this is marble and glass. I mean, it's beautiful. You can see it. It's really something nice, and it's something that I'll always treasure, and it'll be passed down to my son. He pass it on down, whatever, and maybe like keep it in the family, because it's one of a kind. It's handmade, and it's beautiful. And I can't thank him enough for it. You couldn't give me something that I couldn't treasure any more than this. And I'll never use a duck hunt. I might sit on the back porch and talk to a few ducks, because they come in my yard all the time. Well, folks, that's about it. And I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great day. Let me mention one thing before I leave, though. And I always like to say this. If there's something you really want to do and you've never done it, because maybe you don't have the time, the money, whatever, don't waste your time, because I'm going to tell you, life is short and death is forever. So if you got something you really want to do, make the time or the expense and do it. You won't regret it, but if you don't do it, you're going to regret it the rest of your life. See you later, folks.